But I want to welcome everybody to our town hall with Tim Adkins. I'm Liz Marion, your digital community manager, and I want to welcome all of you today. I'm really excited to see everybody coming into our virtual room and joining us on Facebook. And I'm going to pass it over to a man that needs no introduction if you've attended some of our town halls, but if you're new, the founder of Bunker Labs, Todd Connor. Hey, Todd.
All right. Hey, Liz. Hey, everybody. Good to see so many folks joining us. And Tim Adkins, thanks so much for joining us. I'm really excited to introduce Tim. He's someone who I've known since the early days of Bunker Labs, where, we were just gathering folks that were military veterans starting businesses. And Tim started a business that he has subsequently grown quite successfully to a multi-million-dollar business called Command Mechanical Group. And Tim, just a fantastic person. I'd love it if you could share quickly just like your backstory in the business.
Sure. Thank you so much for asking me to come on here. It's a privilege to work with you guys and to have started Command in Bunker Labs, and to be where we're at today is a huge credit, not just to the organization, but Todd, to yourself. Thanks for putting that together for all the veterans that are out there. A little bit about me. I am originally from Cicero, Illinois. Moved to Riverside. Went to Riverside Brookfield High School. Shortly after September 11th, I joined the Army. After graduating high school, I left for the Army and was deployed almost immediately to Iraq. I did a tour in Iraq from 2003 till 2005. Came home. Really didn't know what I was doing with my time. I was attending school, but half-heartedly, working in bars, and just really didn't have a good grasp on what my life was going to look like post-military. And I guess what had originally happened and how I got into the construction industry was somebody had originally brought an opportunity to be a union pipe fitter to my attention. And as little as I knew, I grew up very, very poor, and there was no middle class opportunities for me in my area. I didn't understand that you could have a six-figure job in the construction industry. It was unknown to me. I thought construction workers were the people that kind of waited outside Home Depot waiting for bathrooms needing remodeling. So I passed it, or I passed on it. And I remember thinking one day over at the same individual that offered me that opportunity's house, well, he's got a Mercedes in the driveway, a big house. Maybe there's something to this construction business. So I decided to investigate a little bit more. Luckily, the local Union 597, the gentlemen that were in charge there, saw fit to give me an opportunity to become a pipe fitter. And that's how I started. I started as an apprentice pipe fitter with local Union 597. And I just kind of started to work my way up. I applied everything that I learned in the military, discipline, organized structure for planning and for executing different types of tasks, teamwork, and just the work ethic. And it got me a lot further in my business than most people would have been able to get without that military experience or applying that military experience. From there, I took a small hiatus. My brother had joined the Army National Guard and was being deployed to Afghanistan, and I wanted to be on that deployment as well. So I left construction for about a year and a half, 2 years, and I went and fought in Afghanistan, Helmand Province, for about a year and a half. Upon returning from Helmand Province, I was one of the lower, I was E5 sergeant at the time, and I was one of the lower enlisted to receive a Bronze Star for my work in Afghanistan. And it was looked very highly upon my unit. So they gave me the opportunity to go to pretty much every cool guy school that I could in the military. So from there, I went to Air Assault, Ranger School, and numerous amount of other schools that I was able to go to and graduate and really add to my military resume and learn more about myself as a soldier, but also as a civilian, just as a person. And came back, worked my way into a longer standing career as a construction worker. And I kind of worked my way up. I became a foreman. I became a superintendent, or a general foreman, then a superintendent, then director of operations, Meanwhile, I saw that in the construction industry, there was a real earning cap there. If you started in the field without a college education, you really were only going to make it to a certain level, which was around superintendent. So I put myself through Loyola, finished my undergrad at Loyola, and I'm currently finishing my master's at Northwestern. About 3.5 years ago, I was working for a national construction company, building projects all over the world: Saudi Arabia, Mexico, Canada, all of kind of the United States. I was everywhere. And somebody had talked to me and had said, "Hey, Tim, you've really seen the business from start to finish. You know the finance side, you know the construction portion, you know how to run men, you know how to run jobs, you know how to deal with customers, and you have a big network. Why don't you start your own business?" It's a niche for veteran-owned companies. A certain percentage has to be set aside for veterans. And I thought about it, and I was a little bit reluctant. At the time, I had 2 kids, and I was making really good money. It seemed kind of crazy to take that risk. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that if all of these customers are telling me that it's an opportunity, I'm going to take a stab at it. And if I can get the financing for it, if the bank believes in me, then it's probably worth it. So I went to a few banks, got turned down a few times, but inevitably was able to convince Wintrust, my lender at the time, to go ahead and invest in Mechanical. And almost 4 years later, December will be 4 years. We have gone from zero in revenue in our first 6 months to just shy of $30 million as of this year.
It's amazing.
And that's where we're at today.
And how many employees do you have?
So we are construction, so it fluctuates. But we're a minimum stay of around 20, 22 right now, but we've been as high as 45.
Amazing. So I'm going to talk about a couple of threads in this, because I think I see a comment from Keith Weir with IBEW Local 46. There's the Helmets to Hard Hats program. I don't think that we talk enough in this country or in the veteran community about the opportunities that exist in the trades, where you can make a great living in and of itself, but also the opportunities that exist to own your own business. How long were you working then in the trades before you actually saw and really were invited to get the app, or someone encouraged you, a mentor, somebody encouraged you, says, "Hey, yeah, think about starting your own business"? How long had you worked in construction before you started your own business?
So about 7 years, which is a very small tenure in I think I had finally just tenured out. I only had about 3.5, 4 years as a journeyman pipe fitter before I started my own business, maybe 5.
Mm-hmm.
I have 16 in the industry now, but yeah, it wasn't a very long-lived career. I saw an opportunity to continue to move up, and that's what I was chasing.
Mm-hmm. And who was it that encouraged you to start your own business? And talk to me a little bit more about just the thought process of making sense of that. Because it sounds like if that intervention didn't take place, like you might not have otherwise pursued it.
Yeah, it was, there were a few drinks involved, as I think every great business venture.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. We were on a industry trip in the construction industry. Although we're very regulated from a safety standpoint, we're very unregulated from a financial standpoint, how to spend your dollars, et cetera. So we typically entertain with trips and things of that nature. So it can be a really, really fun industry where you have where you're actually having a network of friends / business associates. So I was on one of these trips that they bring the industry leaders, and I was definitely the youngest guy on the trip. And I was having owners of huge companies, 100 million, 200 million, or C-level and above, talking to me and encouraging me. And it was mentored. I have a really good friend, a mentor. His name's Bud Porter. He owns Porter Pipe and Supply. They're huge in Chicago. Just a group of people in my industry that just really saw an opportunity, not just for me, but for the industry itself to really get something different. And construction is an industry where I can say we are all very close to each other and we support each other very well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
of course, Wintrust is a fantastic bank.
Oh yeah, great.
And came alongside and helped with the debt financing. did you take outside money? How did you talk to us a little bit, sort of
Capitalized.
Barney style as everything about like, what does it cost to start a business, and how did you talk about the options for financing and what you did?
Sure. Construction's a little bit different, right? In the tech space, you have a lot of the PE companies that you can raise some capital, just different types of angel investors, et cetera. You don't really have that in the construction space or in any type of service space where it's operating a company like that or service-based industry. So you really got to look at traditional financing. Either you have to find partners. Typically, there's nobody going to there won't be too many people that want to invest in a construction firm and be a silent investor. So you're taking on a full-time partner, which can be a little tricky, or you're raising debt through traditional financing mechanisms like debt financing through a traditional bank. A lot of people are doing it with credit cards at first, but those are typically your mom and pop shops, as they like to say, which they make a great living and they do well for themselves. So I would say the number one way to raise money for a business in the commercial construction space, it has to be through your traditional lenders, your banks, because there is so much capital required. We took on about $350,000 our first year in debt, and then I took on an additional $350,000 the following year. So right now we have the ability to call ourselves debt free, but we're also looking to continue to grow, which means we need more capital. It really depends on the size of your business and how much you're looking for, what your business is trying to do. And then the one thing that I learned about making the request was they were less concerned about my operational excellence, because they knew I was going to screw it up a little bit at first, as everybody does. They were more concerned about the market needing me and the market wanting me. So what eventually secured my line of credit with Wintrust was I walked to the bank. I had gone to all my customers, people that wanted, those same people that were, drunk talking me into starting a business. And I said, put your money where your mouth is. I need a letter saying that you intend to use Command Mechanical. And I walked in with over $1.2 billion worth of construction revenue per year into Wintrust. And I said, it's not just my idea. Yes, I really want to do this and I think I'm qualified, but here's a whole industry that thinks I'm qualified as well and would like me to have this business. And that completely turned the tables with talking to the bank.
Yeah, that's great. And that's an important insight. Just that the need for a network is so important. I think a lot of what we see with entrepreneurs, and I want to ask you a question about the advice that you give, is just that people don't necessarily know. They think that starting a business is like you go off somewhere else and do it. And I think it's more often like the path that you're describing, where you're working in an area, you have expertise, you're building a network, you have competence and expertise, and people look at that and say, okay, Tim, you could take this to the next level, and here's what that would look like. So I think that's just an important thing, that you were sort of in years as a professional, building the network, got the pre-commitments from the customers, and then the financing followed. What advice, you look back and you've obviously learned a lot, right? Like, what's the advice that somebody who's earlier in this process, what would you have wanted to have heard that could have made this journey for you a little bit smoother?
The one thing that I don't, and I'm careful when I do say this, because the first thing that I tell, I've given a few speeches to entrepreneurs. I've spoken with a few insurance companies that, as far as being a Latino-owned business or as far as being a veteran-owned business. And the one thing that I stress to entrepreneurs is make sure you have the job before you have the company. I didn't have a huge, long career in this business, but I knew it inside and out before I took that leap. And I think that's the most important part, is understand what you're trying to do. I've had so many people pitch me businesses that they just have no experience in. They've Googled that it's worked for a couple people, and that's how they want to jump into it. And typically they either never get it off the ground, never are comfortable enough with it, make sure you spend a little bit of time in what you inevitably want to do. That's first. And I guess the second thing that's on the brighter side is most entrepreneurs will tell you that their first couple of years are just excruciating and it's so hard and it's the worst thing. And oh my God, I'm so glad it's over. Yeah, there's parts of that, but it's a lot scarier the way people talk about it. You take it one day at a time and you get through it. And it's not as hard as you may think once you dedicate yourself and once you break it down into a day by day type process, much like they teach us in the military.
Mm-hmm. How have you matured? And there's a question, Colby Ellison. She asked, what habits did you have to create going from employee to entrepreneur? You know, obviously there's a lot of assets that being in the military serves you, like just focus on the next task at hand. Are there things that you had to do differently when you transitioned from employee to entrepreneur?
I think the biggest thing is to not lose one thing. Remember, you're still an employee. Mm-hmm. I think the people that succeed the most remember that they're an employee of their own organization. Sure, I make the decisions day to day, which adds to some stress and some forward thinking. But remember that you serve the organization as an entrepreneur. So that's one thing that I would say to keep. One thing that I would say the toughest transition from going employee to entrepreneur is there's nobody telling you what to do. Every day you wake up, you have to figure out what the next best step is. And on a laundry list of 5,000 things, being able to prioritize where to spend your time becomes either an endless, relentless pursuit that maybe you're on the right track, maybe you're not. But that was the toughest part is I don't have tasks handed to me anymore. I have to not only create tasks for myself, but also for my subordinates as well.
Yeah, that's a big one. We talk about that all the time where being an entrepreneur is hard because you not only have to do the to-do list, which is what being a good employee is, but you have to make the to-do list. And that can be disorienting for I think entrepreneurs. There's a question here and the Q&A is open. So if folks want to ask questions, I'm seeing some good ones come through. William Breeze asked the question, what professional advice did you get along the way that might have been more of a disservice than a service, what related to contracts, financing, personnel? We get a lot of advice when you're an entrepreneur. Was there anything that you look back on and say, hey, entrepreneurs, you're going to hear this a lot, but this may or may not be the right piece of advice?
Yeah. That's actually a great question, and hopefully nobody that's given me this particular advice is listening. But the toughest thing that I faced was I'm the type of individual that will walk into a room and understand that I'm not the smartest guy in the room, that there's people around me, that there's relationships that I have that I can turn to. And there's things that I've mentioned to my bank, questions that I've asked of my bankers, and then I go to my mentors and say, hey, I asked my bank this, et cetera, et cetera. Why would you ever tell your bank that? They're going to crucify you. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. These people, especially if you pick the right ones, the right bankers, the right bonding, the right insurance, they're part of your team and they're there to see you succeed. Don't be afraid to ask the questions. Mm-hmm. It is much better to ask the question before you and avoid making the mistake than try to look like you're some type of genius that then you make a huge mistake and then they do come after you. And I think that's the biggest thing is walk in very humble and let them know that, hey, I'm still new at this. I'm still learning.
Mm-hmm. That's a big one. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they have like a pitch deck and they want me to sign an NDA. And I'm like, nobody cares about your dumb idea or has room for it, And by the way, like maybe it's a brilliant idea, but even if it's brilliant, it's not my idea, right? So I just think spending money on attorneys or being in secret, it's like build a team of people that you trust. And then to your point, just bring them into the process because is all the gas in the tank that's cool. And you don't need to be sort of thinking about what to share or not share if you got the right people around you. Did you have business partners or do you have business partners and how have you thought about that?
I originally had one business partner. It didn't work out with the certification and his previous employer, so he decided to stay where he is. And he was obviously an equity business partner. He's no longer here, but still a friend of the family, so to speak. So as far as equity is concerned, I own 100% of my firms, with the exception of, so I do have 4 companies, by the way. And one of my ventures, I do have a partner. But that being said, I also have 45 partners, right? And my employees and my teammates, and I still look at it that way. So although I may not share equity, we share in profits, we share in hard times, good times, and that's kind of how I view it.
Mm-hmm. Given the experience of having a business partner, which I've had as well, what do you think are the right reasons to have a business partner, and what are sort of the wrong reasons? Like, give us a mental model for people that are thinking about having partners in their business.
And this is my opinion, solely based on how I believe. I think the wrong reason to have a business partner is because you need the money, because there's other assets out there to go out and get money and still own 100% of your business. When you're 100% killing yourself every single day, grinding, and then somebody wants to jump in because they donated or got you started financially, but have done not a whole lot of work along the way, I think that's really a terrible reason to take on a business partner. And I haven't seen it go well for most. The good reason to take on a business partner is if they have a skill set, capability, experience level that you don't have, that is complementary to what you're trying to accomplish. Mm-hmm. And that's the only way I would ever bring, whether they were putting up money or not, that's the only way I would ever take on a business partner.
Mm-hmm. That's great. How much of your business today, Tim, is with government contracting versus, can you talk just a little bit about what does your customer base look like? And can you maybe share a little bit about being a veteran-owned business and the opportunities or limitations that are associated with that?
Sure. And there's 2 ways to look at it. There's the federal contracting level, and then there's also state, city contracting level. Federal, there are huge incentives to being a veteran-owned business. And in fact, one of my businesses, which is a wholesale company, we hope to one day start working with the federal government to start moving different construction materials throughout the United States, but also create opportunities for veterans in other states besides just Illinois. So there's those opportunities, which are federal set-asides. The money's out there, has to be spent with veteran-owned businesses. And then there's the state and local government. There's at the CDA, Chicago Department of Aviation, Jamie Rhee, who is the commissioner of CDA for Chicago. She has gone out of her way to help veterans and create a program where, much like the federal side, where there is set-aside work, there's set-aside work here in Chicago for veteran-owned companies. In regards to my revenue and what drives it, public to private, we're about 70%. Public, we're about that additional 30. However, that may change with what's going on currently in the economic landscape. Private work, I believe, is going to dip a little. So we're going to have to shift fire, pick up a little bit more government work, and utilize our certifications even more than we have in the past.
Mm-hmm. This may be a naive question, but does the veteran-owned business designation matter in the private work that you do?
It does. Okay. It does. There are huge, for example, I'm doing Federal Home Loan Bank. It's for those of you that are from Chicago or know Chicago, it's within the old post office building right off of Congress, or IW Wells now. And they have no requirement whatsoever. It's just something that they wanted to do as a business. And McDonald's, we did the McDonald's headquarters relocation in downtown Chicago. Same thing. No requirements. They weren't getting anything for it, short of they were trying to help certain demographics in the community. So it is a huge benefit, both sides.
And you've made a priority of hiring veterans. What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So the whole business is based on bringing that feeling of that's what I missed when I got out of the military, to be honest. I missed that brotherhood. I missed that, hey, somebody cares about me just because we've gone through things together and we've developed a kinship, a friendship, a brotherhood. I missed that. And that's the one thing that I saw. That's why I like construction so much. I saw an opportunity I've proven that planning like you're in the military works in construction, and acting like you're a professional soldier, same thing for a professional construction worker or professional anything. So we brought that here to command, and I think people feel that. And what we do is we go out of our way to find veterans that don't know what they're trying to do. And we work with our respective local unions to try to get those guys or girls into the unions and have those six-figure jobs in the construction industry and work for us. To date, I believe it's 33 veterans have been employed in the construction industry since the start of command with our group. And that's really what we're pushing for. They add to the culture and really help us out.
Yeah, because that cultural piece is like, you can train on technical skills, but the cultural piece and the work ethic, you just cannot. There's never enough time in these conversations, but a couple more questions. There's a lot of questions about COVID and the impact of your business in this time. What are you seeing as the impact in construction?
We've had a great year. We did take financially, we did take a hit in April just due to a bunch of jobs shutting down and not being able to do work. So our billings were down. We're back on track. The way that I see it in construction, much like any other business owner, and that is one thing that I recommend to future entrepreneurs. Don't just pay attention to your industry and what's going on in your business. Pay attention to the adjacent markets. So I'm watching steel markets. I'm watching just the financial landscape. If people have money, big businesses have money, they're going to build new offices, which is going to create work in my industry. And that's the type of things that you need to be paying attention to. From a construction industry standpoint and how I think it'll affect us, I see a dip in private work. I think what people are realizing, and dealing with the brokers and the real estate people that I deal with, people are realizing they don't need these huge footprints inside buildings any longer. People can rotate from home. Some people can work from home full time. And I think you're going to see a shift in the commercial real estate market. People are going to start downsizing their office, which is going to create a lot of work for us at first, but then going to taper off the amount of private work. I think the market's back strong. We'll see what happens long term. On its way back to being strong, we'll see what happens long term. So I think a lot of the private developments are going to delay. And as far as the government work, the government typically in times of recession puts stimulus money into the economy in the form of infrastructure. So especially for a minority company, that every government dollar that's spent has minority set aside attached to it, or a veteran set aside attached to it, I think we're going to be okay for the next 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. I hope so. I'm going to end on this question because it's a good from Matt. We've got others from Leroy and Kevin and several folks that have questions, which we can try to address later. What does success look like for you? So, I mean, you're sitting here now, just a short few years later, and you've got this business that's got, between 20 and 45 employees in a given season, 30 million in revenue. What's the goal for you, Tim?
Probably the same goal. Probably, and I'm 34 years old, so I've got a little bit of a fight still left in me before I want to start taking it easy. We've grown our business very safely. We've grown our business in a manner that on paper looks like a huge amount of growth. But at the same point, we're doing it very strategically. We're building the right team. We're building the infrastructure. And personally, I love what we're doing for vets here in Illinois. If we could do this in other geographic locations, that's success to me. If I can create 30 jobs in every state that requires our service, that allows for a vet to come off active duty and get a six-figure job, that's success to me. So that's the branch that's the direction that the company's headed. We're starting to investigate other geographic locations and continue our growth. I would love to be a $100 million over 5 different states entity and bigger. I love it. I love being an entrepreneur. I love owning my own business. I love building teams, like be part of something bigger than myself. So I don't see that slowing down anytime soon.
Awesome. Tim, this has been great. I'm so grateful for your leadership and just proud of success, impressed by it, and all the sort of the force multiplying effects it's having for the veterans that you hire, the clients you serve, and for the veteran community at large. So thank you for taking some time out to share your story with us. And if folks want to just give them a plug as to where to find you or find Command.
Absolutely. So if we didn't get a chance, we had a lot of questions left over, as Todd referenced, but we will send those to Tim to see if he can answer those for you. If you email townhall@bunkerlabs.org, we just dropped that in the chat. Also, I'm going to ask everybody if you could also fill out the quick, just minute survey that Jada just dropped the link in there. We would love to hear from you how we're doing, if we are covering all the topics and subjects that you want to hear about, and what else we can help you with in terms of resources for your businesses. Tim, thank you so much. That was fascinating to me. I just really enjoyed the whole conversation, and Todd for leading that. Thank you to all of you, and email us at townhall@bunkerlabs.org with any other questions. We'll see you guys soon.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks again, Tim.